I need a Pepsi. I realize I don't have one, and I need to lock my Chihuahua in a cage. So I'm going to take 2 minutes. During that time, why doesn't somebody give a beautiful 100-word summary of the trouble you guys got into last week?
So,
once upon a time, there was this kobold named Birdie who got arrested by ugly halflings.
You're all ugly. None of you have feathers. And that's it.
Yeah.
The end.
And then this kobold named Birdie met a bunch of other assholes, and we went on magical adventures together, and now it's over. Thank you for watching.
we're going to have 4 hours of Brick telling us what happened next. It's all
And
mandatory.
berating us.
There will be a test afterwards.
Yes, and you at home are required to participate in this test.
There's,
Apparently, it's an interactive test.
mhm.
I
Multiple
heard that you
choice.
can choose to opt for the physical combat instead.
Physical
Man.
Like,
challenge.
get lifelines.
No, physical
would-
combat.
I
I
wish.
like to phone a friend. I like to phone Adrex.
No, see, it's dare, then double dare, then take the physical challenge. Just fuck the just fuck answering the question. We're going to take the physical challenge.
Now that's hard PG-13, McDohl. We're aiming for soft PG-13.
No, we were talking about the test and how you
I like a
could,
nice hard PG-13.
I mean, no F words, no Q words.
I'm gonna do my best, Brickroad. I'm going to do my level best.
Solid J.
That's
Yeah.
this sounds dumb to people who like have never actually tried it, but it is a skill you have to learn. Like if you take somebody that curses constantly like I do, like every other word out of my mouth in the day is something vulgar, but you have to hone that skill to not let those words out of your mouth when
That's adorable that you think you curse every other word.
I'm not as bad as some people I know.
McDohl. McDohl is bad. It's McDohl.
I think my
McDohl
wife curses more than I do.
I miss cursing. I still do it. I miss it so much. I behave for your stream as best I can.
Aw. Well, you did belch a lot during our Final
I
Fantasy races. And I think we caught you picking your nose once.
To be fair, I pointed that out.
It was pretty
I
funny.
pointed
I
out.
remember that. You tripped out so hard. I remember that.
That's another skill. You have to come up with some pretense, like, oh, I gotta go jiggle a cable conveniently off camera. That's when you get up there and you dig around. You know?
Or you could just do it on camera, point it out, and make people laugh.
Yeah, that's fine too. Like, listen, I'm a gross man. I shower twice a week, maybe.
Twice a week.
I just have a bag of gravy that I'm eating with my hands. I'm gonna pick my nose sometimes.
A bag of gravy.
What do the hands add to the gravy?
You know, because all your silverware is dirty, is the implication here. Like, you can't get a spoon
But your
because
hands aren't?
You have your skin salt that gets all over it.
It adds flavor.
just
It's a liquid.
you're not a man until you put your hand into a sack of cold, congealed gravy.
Why do you have a sack of gravy?
Nodal, you're not following us here. You're just
Because I'm out of Tupperware, okay? That's why I have a sack of gravy.
you don't go down to the Piggly Wiggly and get you a sack of gravy.
What'd you cook? Piggly Wiggly is the name of a place where you'd buy the sack of gravy.
Right.
Actually, it would be the sack o' gravy.
That's the name of a chain of supermarkets. Yes, Piggly Wiggly.
At Sam's Club, you can get them the size of like a bag of mulch.
Yeah, you can get get one of those big old like bags.
You can get the bucket of gravy.
flour.
It's a beanbag chair that has a straw coming out of the side of it. Wow, this is really gross. Let's see if we can get back on track here.
Yeah, so we already did the 100-word summary, so this is gonna be hilarious for Treble.
Okay.
Why? Just don't judge me and my bags of gravy.
Okay.
Red.
Focus.
Yeah.
Your stream of consciousness goes something like this.
Mm-hmm.
One moment, you're losing a fight to Mammon, and you realize you're not going to be able to wrench yourself free of the golem that has you grappled. And you've just witnessed Adrex stumbling upon what looks to be Mammon's weakness, striking with his silver blade. And with your last thought, you take the silver dagger out of your bandolier and fling it to Adrex.
Yep.
And the next conscious moment, you hit the ground in a dark wooden room, and you have a sensation in your stomach that you want to retch up everything you've eaten in the past month. And your vision is swimming, and your head is pounding, and you're conscious only of a small humanoid shape that startles as you hit the ground, and then runs out of the room crying, "It worked! It worked! Someone rouse the captain!" And then everything comes up out of your throat.
Yeah, I'll continue to vomit. Is that a bonus action or can I still...
And after
still in combat?
After a few moments, I mean, you dry heave. All of your equipments that's written on your character sheet, you still have, except for anything made of gold or silver.
I don't think that's a lot.
And after a moment, your eyes start to adjust, and it's very dark in here. The only light is moonlight coming in through some small windows on the sides on one side of the room, and it's not even particularly bright moonlight. You hear the sound of rain hitting outside just over your head, and there's a slight rocking to the room back and forth as your senses start to smooth out a little bit.
After I finish vomiting, does it smell like a ship or the ocean?
It smells like vomit.
Okay.
But you do not smell the ocean. Every so often a peal of thunder or a peal of lightning rings out. And after a few more moments, the small humanoid shape reappears. And now that your eyes have adjusted, you see it's a young human. Maybe 9 or 10 years old, or 17. I mean, it's hard to tell with humans. They're kind of strange.
They're weird.
Accompanied by a man you recognize, wearing a black cloak, gray skin, silver hair, and smoked dark glasses.
Captain?
And he kneels down next to you and reaches out with his hand and takes your chin in your hand and kind of turns your head side to side. And then looks back towards the little human. It says, "Drib, I do believe you were the first among us to witness a miracle." And the captain hooks his arm around yours and hoists you up to your feet.
Are the others alive?
He asks how you feel.
I just finished throwing up, but...
Go ahead and set yourself to 1 hit point, by the way.
Okay. Healing surges?
Whatever you had.
Okay.
You haven't finished any kind of rest yet. He asks if you feel weak. Can you walk?
I think so.
He nods, and he says, "Then walk with me, then." And he begins telling you the most curious tale about how he received a missive from you and your companions. And he details the letter that you wrote him on how to find this Southling island. And for him, it was a 2-month journey to this island.
Blacked out again.
Oh, I'm blacked out. So I'm having trouble with Discord, and I'm going to try to keep on top of that. What was the last thing you guys heard me say?
He details a missive about, and that was it.
About a tropical island that you described. and how this was a long journey on his part. It was a 2-month journey through somewhat hostile waters, through Southling trade routes. And he found the portal, and when he and his crew stepped through it, he describes Voronoct Keep. He describes the vast stores of treasure that he found in the basement of Voronoct Keep.
Mm-hmm.
And then he describes a battle. He says, and he speaks on the topic with some knowledge when he speaks of Brynjar and the Ice King, that the Great Gold Dragon, along with a smaller and weaker but still extremely old and vicious Black Dragon, flying together to the realms of the Ice King, on which Voronoct Keep sat on the borders. And at first the Ice King resisted, and a great battle had been fought. He didn't witness this firsthand. This was relayed to him by people that he met when he arrived at Voronoct. In the end, the Ice King was not killed, but was forced into submission. And now the 3 dragons essentially act as one, with Brynjar being the king amongst them and the other 2 his servants. And in the subsequent months, the Mammon created a bridge of gold. A very treacherous bridge, maybe a meter or 2 long, that comes down from the mile-high plateau. And as you can imagine, getting the Ice King's armies down this bridge was very difficult indeed, with high winds. But with the dragon's assistance, most of them made it to the bottom. And over the next coming months, either subjugated or eradicated the orc armies in the lowlands to the south. He did witness the second battle of dragons. At one point, he and his crew made a journey overland to the realm of Qiangzhou, who he thought owed him a favor, strangely enough. They had to make a quick exit and found paths out from Qiangzhou's realm that they don't think the Red Dragon knew about, perhaps dug by renegade kobolds. They had heard of tumultuous interactions in the area between Mammon's army coming south and the goblin hordes and kobold tribes that surround the mountains. When they came here to investigate, and he says the reason they came to investigate is because anytime these words reached his ears, he thought he might find some sign of you or your companions. Qiangzhou did not bend the knee to Brynjar, and instead a great battle was fought in the air between the 4 dragons, which Qiangzhou lost. But there was devastation everywhere. The entire lake was essentially turned into a pool of molten gold. The dragon's corpse itself was ripped apart in the air. As far as he knows, the monastery that stood on the summits of the peaks has been destroyed, and any monks that were still there must have been scattered. He waited almost 2 years before going back, because he wanted to know what happened to the dragon's hoard. The dragon's hoard, he says, turned out to be untouched. And it's there we found this. And he's taking you into the stores below the ship. And
this is his ship.
This is the Deceit, yes.
Yeah. Does he disable the sleep trap?
Yes, sure. I had forgotten about that, but I see that you have it.
I imagine Red walks up to that door with just a little bit of trepidation.
He says that he found the most curious item inside of the Red Dragon's hoard that must have been a gift from Brynjar while he was trying diplomacy rather than violence to bring the Red Dragon to his cause. He opens up the treasury, which is a room that you've been in before, and stacks and stacks of treasure. It looks like the entire dragon's hoard has been relocated into this one room. And in the corner, you see a pristine, beautiful statue of Adrex, giving a pelvic thrust. He said at this time they only had unverifiable accounts of the creature that he now knows as Mammon. But finding this statue, he squirreled it away in his treasury and started bending all of his research to two ends. One, to find a way to reverse the petrification, and two, to find out where the other four statues turned up.
So why didn't you wake up Adrex first?
You see his face go a little bit dour. And he tells you that the ritual involved with reversing the petrification, first of all, they weren't sure whether it would work. They had tried some experiments with small animals and things that didn't go well. The procedure that they eventually landed on, which Calcine is the one that has to perform it, his lover and navigator.
Yep.
And it is devastating to her constitution. It was a few months of searching after they found the Adrex statue that they heard word of yours. It was essentially a traveling gambler who had come into possession of a statue that became colloquially known as Gamblin' Jack. And he makes a motion like he's throwing a dagger to somebody 10 feet away. And it's the same kind of motion you would make if you're casting dice onto the ground. And at that, he slaps you in the shoulder and says, "But don't worry, I won you fair and square, Gamblin' Jack."
All right.
As to why he brought you back first,
Three.
he says he has use of you, and he hands you a handbill.
Mm-hmm.
And it's written in Southling. It's from a kingdom that you haven't heard of, but far, far south of the wall, for an auction of a piece simply called the Hobgoblin Commander. And in the handbill, you see a drawing of a statue you immediately recognize as Raazu. He said if he had his druthers, he would simply go south and win this auction. He has no shortage of gold. The problem is gold no longer has any value. So we need somebody of your particular skills to be able to spirit the statue away into our possession.
That's a pretty big and I assume incredibly heavy thing to move, but other than that, I mean, I can definitely... No, it seems reasonable. What about Wendy and Birdie?
Drib, the little boy that's been following along with you. It's the dead of night, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Very little activity. Just the skeleton crew. None of which you had recognized. But the little boy starts giggling. He says, "Oh, my brother and I saw that one." And he describes a traveling caravan that travels along the northern reaches of the Southlands, just the regions that would be just south of the wall. And he describes a statue that this very gaudy thing that they've dressed up in purple robes and a big floppy hat. And he describes Birdie. And they say, what they've done, you see, is they've taken a copper, like a horse's frig, and they've lashed it onto him with leather so it looks like he's holding it. And he starts laughing hysterically. To which Captain Eyes responds, "Yeah, that sounds like Birdie."
Huh.
He says, "As for Wendy, we know that Mammon seeks a weapon called the Staff of the Magi. And we think that Wendy did something to prevent him from taking it. And we've heard no word of where she may have ended up. But one thing at a time, yes?"
Right. Are we close to the gate? Is the gate close to the city where I need to go steal this thing?
He says that they've already chartered a course, and that they'll be there in a matter of days. Which immediately doesn't make sense to you. Because it should take a month to sail this far south, and then not to say nothing of the overland travel.
I mean, I'm assuming that it just happened to be close to the Tomato Island?
He brings you back up on deck.
Mm-hmm.
And he hands you a lantern hanging from the ship. And bids you cast it out over the edge of the Deceit.
Okay.
And there's no water. And there's no rocking sensation like you're on the water. The rain is pelting you, and you realize it's very cold, and you can see your breath. And looking out, you can see an ocean of clouds underneath you.
You're welcome, Captain Eyes.
Well, I suppose you found the schematics then. Wait, is that child a gnome then? I thought it was a human child, but that would make more sense.
No, he's a human child. He does introduce you to the gnome over the course of the next few days, named Uncle Sideburns. This gnome is paint bald on his entire body, except for thick, bushy, gray sideburns. He is an old, just cantankerous SOB that has nothing nice to say about kobolds whatsoever. But he had been devoting his life to building a vessel like this, and when Captain Eyes brought him huge sacks of gold before it became worthless, and these particular schematics, from that point, it was only a matter of years before he was able to convert the Deceit over.
So what do people use for currency now?
So what happened was, some of these northern lakes, the Lake of Snails, Lake Ten Salts, these were converted into lakes of molten gold through Mammon's magic. The gold swept down through the rivers. And for a while, there was an extraordinary boom, as anybody could have as much gold as they wanted. Crusaders would come through the south, through the wall, to mine the riverbeds and bring gold to the south. This effectively crashed the economies of some of the major kingdoms, at which point Mammon began to swoop in and buy up mining rights from humans, dwarves, and gnomes to large silver mines. So not only is gold now essentially worthless, but silver is impossible to find. And he motions to Drib. And he tells you that Drib's brother, Aotum, his father was an owner of one of these silver mines. Their family owned the mines. And upon his father's death, his brother, who had transferred the rights to his mine over to Mammon's agents, turned all of his lesser siblings out, saying they could no longer afford to keep them. Aotum is sleeping safely below deck. He's a swordsman of no small skill, and he kind of went on the road adventuring with his little brother, keeping them both alive for a few years before they fell in with Captain Eyes. And that's the story of this tiny human.
Well, I believe if we can get Raazu back. Another thing is she has the deeds to a significant amount of southern property that might be worth something if we need any more material. Well,
he does acknowledge that land is the most valuable asset you can own now.
So any ideas on how I'm going to steal this thing? Again, my biggest concern is just the size.
The scheme,
I'm not palming a coin here.
The scheme goes off without a hitch. It is a grand and fantastical fiasco that would have been an extraordinary adventure to play out over the course of a session, but which we simply do not have time for here.
Yep.
And you managed... And you do indeed find this Hobgoblin statue that was to be auctioned off for some obscene number of copper pieces, which is all of the Southron nobility really trade in, is copper, iron coins, and platinum. Silver has become too valuable to spend. If you're able to make things or control any amount of silver, you are considered rich beyond rich. And gold is absolutely everywhere. It simply has no value. The reason this particular piece was selling for so much is because it's a work of art that has no discernible origin. Some noble house came into possession of it, that passed down from a father to a son to a grandson, and ended up at this auction, and that's where you managed to lift it from. And by the time you get back to the ship, with Raazu's statue in tow...
And the 16th of an airship.
Right. And a talking chocobo robot. But no goddamn espers, even though you spend an hour resetting.
Oh, come on. Man. You just don't know how to RNG manipulate.
Over the course...
right now.
Over the course of the 2 weeks or so that it takes you to put this plan together, and it takes you to be well again, you can go ahead and take as many long rests as you want.
Okay.
Calcine manages to complete the second ritual and bring Adrex back to life. And Adrex, same thing. Everything, all your equipment is still there, except everything made of gold or silver is gone.
Brennier's longbow was not gold, right?
It was not. It was some kind of petrified wood. So it's very heavy, and it doesn't have... and it's very difficult to string the bow, but it's not made out of gold or silver. You do still have the hilt of your silver sword. Is still there.
But the silver sword and the silver dagger are gone.
Yes. Also aboard this vessel.
Still the flame tongue? The Faith flame tongue?
Yes.
I guess I would.
Not made of silver. The crew, very little crew. Scarcely more than a dozen people. Some of them you recognize and some of them you don't. Bronzel Griffinheart is aboard. And he is very happy to see Adrex and Red resurrected. Student 9 is aboard. And Student 9 has made some body modifications, made entirely out of silver. Also aboard are Og and Gorg, who are renegades from an orc tribe that's now defunct. It's been completely assimilated into Mammon's army. But they're the sons of 2 renegades from the tribe Thousand Arms, who were stationed at Mogder Dam. One of the soldiers aboard is Andreas, who is a son of the Mokden, a very skilled pikeman. Their main lookout is Bubbly, a Kenku who never speaks but makes all kinds of other fun noises. There is a ratfolk aboard that mostly keeps to himself. All you know is that his name is Zuta. There's a human woman aboard with silver and red hair named Flu. And very quickly you learn that Flu grew up far in the north, where you guys did most of your adventuring. Because her grandfather was traveling with Arcadius and Pacdot. And you realize this is Rolf's granddaughter. Uncle Sideburns, who I've mentioned. Aotim and Drib, the Southlings. And the last person aboard, you're introduced to as a hero from South, from the battle at the Broken Wall. A very old orc woman, wearing the tabard of Southlings and wielding a greatsword. But she's kept her distance from the 2 of you. And that's when Red brings Raazu's statue back aboard. And there's a great celebration aboard as this victory is won.
No word on Griagro, huh?
Lots of word on Griagro. Griagro is a... Captain Eyes uses Griagro very sparingly because his little bolt hole is right in the middle of where Mammon's hordes control. But Griagro has very old hordes of his own that he controls psionically. It's very freaking scary is how he describes it. But once or twice over the years, Griagro has been invaluable in unearthing knowledge about Mammon's activities. Griagro has tendrils that extend out into the orc hordes that Mammon controls.
Let me sorry, back up 1 second. I might have misheard something. Is this 2 years later or 20 years later?
Yeah. What's the time frame here?
64 years have passed.
Oh, jeez.
And as you guys are sailing back north, as Calcine is regaining her strength to perform the ritual a third time, the rivers you fly over are made of gold. Much of the land is decaying very rapidly, and it is not the world you remember. This is where Kefka has already won.
Does the South still have water in their rivers, or
Mammon's Reach has not yet reached far into the south, but there was a great battle where Mammon shattered the wall at Fort Salus and tried to launch an invasion to the south. His forces were repelled. I mean, he has to maintain very long supply lines at this point. Very difficult to wage war over these distances. And the armies to the south are very well provisioned and very well trained. What he's been doing instead over the course of the past few decades is extending his influence economically in the south. People who Captain Ice keeps eyes on in the south, his spies network and whatnot. Essentially, Mammon controls many of the great houses and kingdoms, human kingdoms of the south, many of which he bought with gold very early on, and now he just has a stranglehold on. So what he was not able to do militarily, he was able to do economically and diplomatically.
remind me what race Calcine is?
You never really had a good handle on that.
Does she look much older?
No.
Okay.
Bronzel doesn't look a day older either, huh?
He does not.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And you guys begin crisscrossing the regions around the wall, where many humans and Moakton and most civilized creatures from the north and south together are kind of intermingling and intermixing in scattered villages and whatnot. And this is where you guys are crisscrossing back and forth as you're searching for this merchant caravan that apparently has this vulgar and grotesque statue of a kobold. And this is when Raazu is able to be roused.
He wants to control all the silver mines because he is very physically weak to silver. In case you guys don't know that.
Once Raazu's brought up to speed with all of this, she's like, what happened to Thada?
The old orc woman who's on board. Once Raazu is back, she's there to greet you. She's standing vigil over you as you come back to life and retch up your guts.
Thada.
And she's easily 3 times your age now. This is an orc who's seen battle her entire life. And the story is, she had no taste for being aboard a pirate ship. In fact, several months after the horribleness that happened at Voronacht Keep, when they made their narrow escape back out to the Deceit, several months later, when they put to port in a Southling fishing village just south of the wall, was where Yashnars took his leave, saying that he had reached the extent of what he could do on open waters and that he had received a vision of Osprum's avatar and was leaving on a journey to seek her out in a city shaped like a ring. Thought I had no opinion on that, but this was as good of a time as any to get away from people that she considered to be thieving, dishonorable, murderous types. So she stuck off the ship with Yashnars and traveled with him for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And she was one of the warriors that held the line when the wall came down, that held back the hordes, and became kind of a Southling hero.
Well, that's good, I suppose. I wish I had been there to give you more mentorship, but circumstances.
She tells you that Circassius taught her the value of honor, chivalry, and strength, and that you taught her that Circassius' outlook was perverse. And from there, the rest she put together herself.
You've done well.
this caravan you guys are tracking down with this hilarious kobold statue in tow. You eventually set down. Every time the Deceit comes to land, it has to land somewhere in water. They find a pond that can hold the ship's draft. So even though you're flying over land, it can still be an overland trek to get back to where the ship can be safely docked, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's a very piecemeal group of traveling folk, all different races and mixtures of races. You recognize humans moked in amongst them, some halflings, a gnome or two, no small amount of half-orcs, the odd goblin here and there. And they have made the cornerstone, the thing that makes them famous, is this bizarre statue of a 2-foot-high kobold with a bronzed horse's phallus attached to it that he is vigorously gripping upon.
I really wish we had cameras right now so I could take a picture of this and show it to Birdie once he's depetrified.
What?
Just because Raazu is that much of an asshole. Just because Raazu is
incredible. Look at this.
What do you guys do to get this statue away from the caravan?
I don't know if we should. Look at how incredible this is.
What if I tell them about the terrible curse? And everything that will befall anyone who possesses it?
That they've never heard of any terrible curse.
Right, but I have like a plus 12 deception, so...
So what is this curse?
This curse that hasn't affected anybody in 60
This was once
years.
just a normal kobold. This is what will happen to anyone who possesses this horse phallus for too long.
The horse phallus?
Well, they attached the horse phallus to it.
Oh. Okay.
It came from one of their horses. It's...
Did they make a mold? Like, man, I have so many questions.
Hard PG-13, huh, Brick Road?
There are websites that'll do this for you. Just saying. They send you a kit, and that's all like... Never mind.
Raazu... Actually, you know what? I just don't even know. I just don't even know what to do here. Raazu is at a loss for words.
I mean, it's incredibly heavy. It's a statue of solid gold.
Okay.
The horse phallus adds very little weight to the overall.
But it's a 2-foot kobold, so I'm wondering, like, is it...
Yeah, it's a 2-foot horse phallus, too. It's enormous.
Trying, Birdie. I'm trying.
No, I mean, getting this aboard the ship is going to involve ropes and winches and stuff.
Okay. So Adrex can't just pick it up and fly off with it.
No, very, very
okay.
nice.
I mean, I did enough to get Raazu out, so if you have any ideas, Adrex.
Well, we got to make them not want it, right?
That's thinking like, yeah, you're actually traveling down windy thinking territory, which actually might not be a bad idea in this situation. What would these people want that would make them not, or what would it take to make these people not want the statue?
A different identity?
Especially if gold is worthless.
Yeah, why?
Gold is worthless, but silver is incredibly valuable. And Captain Ice does have a lot of silver that he took from Voronok Keep before the dragons got there.
Do we trade them for a bunch of silver, do you think?
No, we should just steal it over that. I mean, we need that silver to fight Malman.
Yeah, but...
Like, normally I would say, yeah, no, the silver just
can't
not
really
important,
just steal
but
it.
yeah, it's... Why not? This is Birdie. They stole him. This is an actual sentient being.
I mean, not until you get him back to Calcine, he's not. And just to be clear, Birdie, when Calcine reconstitutes you, you don't get to keep the phallus.
That's okay. I'd probably hit.
No, it's not slavery. It's not like they even know this, but you know, I don't have any moral quandaries about stealing this thing.
Yeah, that's That was never in question, Red. Don't worry.
So is that how you're going to get him? You're just going to steal it away?
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. And I mean, you guys have the resources at hand to do whatever you need to do. You make an enemy out of these caravans when they realize that you've spirited their prized possession away in the middle of the night. But you get Birdie back onto the deceit.
Well, Adrex will leave a polite little note that says, sorry, trying to save the world.
Okay. That makes it all better.
That makes it all better.
Birdie. Same deal. You come to, and you retch up, it feels like everything you've eaten for the past year. Just one moment, you didn't even get to see most of the fight. Just one moment, Mammon was swinging a purse over his head, and the next moment you're on the deck of this ship, retching up.
I have a question.
They did not leave the horse phallus on you.
Okay, I needed to know.
Okay.
I needed to know. And I'm glad, so thank you.
The rat folk, Zuda, attends to you as you come to, and studies you very, very carefully. And eventually he just asks, are you Birdie, the tunneling kobold?
Most days, yeah. Birdie rolls over and throws up again.
And he says that there's a story amongst his people before Mammon's armies wiped them out. His great-great-grandmother knew a fantastical hero who saved them from the snake people named Birdie. And he said that he gave them this, and he pulls out a small clockwork turtle toy that looks like it's been broken down and repaired 100 times over the years. And he wants to know if you're the same Birdie.
Birdie stares at it and goes, he goes, man, those children are really rough on that, weren't they? And he throws up again.
Okay. And the search begins for what happened to Wendy's statue. So, Birdie, same thing. All of your equipment is still on you, but anything made of gold or silver is gone.
Okay, I don't think I have anything.
Student 9, who is also ageless, is essentially Captain I's chief researcher now. Most everybody that you remember on his crew is long dead, either in battles over the years or just of old age, or had abandoned the crew at some point. None of them were as long-lived as he and Calcine. He's an elf and she's something else. But Student 9 they found while he was researching, while Captain I's, after they finished building the ship, and he was doing research in various ruins in the far north, in realms that were controlled by Breniar and the Ice King, and now Mammon. And that's when they came across Student 9 doing similar research. What he was able to do is imbue his body with various silver implements that give him some intuition on Mammon's movements, give him some measure of divination. So several weeks, almost a month after Birdie is brought back, he calls a meeting and explains some dire news. He had long thought that Mammon had been unable to get the Staff of the Magi, this ancient magical artifact that had been denied to him previously. They had speculated that he was bending efforts into freeing it from whatever encasement it was in. And he says he suspects that Mammon has now done so.
You mean... What did Raazu see how Wendy protect? I don't think she.
I think
no,
Red and Adrex would have seen it.
At this point, we'll just assume that Adrex and Red have brought everybody else up to speed on what actually happened to the staff.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't remember what happened.
Nodal, would you like to refresh our memory?
When Wendy got turned into gold, she curled both wings entirely around it, and then had both middle talons outstretched.
Okay. So if he has a staff and something has happened to the Wendy statue,
yeah, then he would have kept it close to hand to try to free the staff. Otherwise, it's useless to him now.
Student 9 suspects.
Except as a as a trophy.
Student 9 suspects that whatever was done to free the staff was exceedingly difficult. If it would have just been as easy as melting the statue down to gain it, Mammon would have done it the day after it happened. Something about Wendy's actions made that impossible. However, he's heard rumors of one of the greater orc tribes of Mammon's armies in the far north, in the area that was once great and densely wooded around Titan's spine, but is now very desolate, like long badlands in every direction because of the lack of groundwater. Apparently one of these orc tribes won a great victory over some rebels that were holed out, probably of Fey origin, in the area. And Student 9 never looks uncomfortable. He always speaks very matter-of-factly. Says that Mammon rewarded the chieftain of this army with a grand statue of a bird, with the understanding that this statue could only be kept in an open latrine pit.
Gross.
And that these reports come with no mention of the staff being encased therein. So it's kind of a good news, bad news situation.
You think maybe Mammon shattered the wings off to get at the statue?
He doesn't know.
Wouldn't be a bird then.
Fair.
That is a good point.
Maybe he found some way to teleport the statue or the staff independent of the other.
Or he found something better than that.
So anyway, it sounds like we have to go kill some orcs. That's never gone poorly.
At which point, I will load up the deck of the Deceit.
Can the Deceit land on the Golden Rivers?
Probably not.
Even in the places where the gold is still molten, that would be a very bad idea. Because it's not...
Oh, we lost Breck again.
We lost him again.
Oh, boy. There we go. Even in the places where the gold is still molten, that would be a bad idea, because molten gold doesn't act like water does.
Yeah.
And you risk getting the ship bogged down in it if it solidifies. So yeah, let me get the map of the Deceit here.
I do have one question. What
Yes.
about Kilbirth down over in the swamp?
No news. Kilbirth, first of all, his realm is very, very far to the south. And second of all, as far as I know, you're one of the few people that actually knows Kilbirth is still alive.
Yeah.
The rumor was that he was murdered and his hoard had already been plundered.
Mm-hmm.
What happened at Voronacht Keep? Thada brought Captain Ice and his men through the portal. Captain Ice and his men immediately began plundering all of the keep's treasures. Emptied out the vaults.
That makes sense.
Scoured some of the surrounding area. Thada continued to implore him, no, we need to get on the ship and start doing the thing that they told me you had to do, via amass an army and figure out how to get it to the north. Captain Ice was not interested in any of that. Until the Ice King descended upon the castle. This was, at some point, Breniar had subjugated the Ice King, and he came to Voronacht Keep with his hordes and made great bridges of ice over the chasm. And his hordes of Dragonborn and undead and white-skinned kobolds was marching across. And one of the keep's civilians, in essence, the necromancer, the bear man that you had met, had a plan to destroy the Ice King so that Breniar could no longer use him. But this plan involved breaking a lock on the
window. Ooh.
They watched what happened from the deck of the Deceit, which at the time had anchored just off the coast of this tropical island. And far to the north in their position in bright daylight, what they saw was a pinpoint, a black and purple flash that darkened the sky that far away.
Wow.
And then vanished. The good news is, all of those awesome lightning ballistas have been attached to the deck of the sea.
It's the command word.
And he says, oddly enough, it was just command word. Isn't that weird?
So the Ice King is no more, huh?
You would think so, but there have been reports in recent years of a dragon.
My
Really?
condolences, Adrex.
Again?
The command word is...
Alright, I'm going to power cycle Discord if that happens one more time.
Yeah.
You would think so, but no, there have been reports of a fourth dragon under Mammon's control. A dragon that seems to warp space where it flies. When it extends its wings in the sky, it's not like looking at wings in the sky. It's like looking through endless void of space and time. They suspect that this is not a fourth dragon that Mammon has found, but rather the transformed Ice King. Whatever magic was unleashed at Voronoct that day reconstituted it into something else.
Great. Now he's twice as horrible.
Birdie is he looks kind of glum, like he looks over at Red and says, "Does that mean if we had done that, we would have cool like space-time powers?"
Probably, Birdie. Probably.
So what is the plan to excise Windy's statue from this orc's latrine pit?
So we have to go pretty far overland, right? If we can't land anywhere in the north.
Yeah.
Pretty far, but over. I mean, Captain Ice has been doing this for a long time now, and he has little bolt holes here and there, secret places where he can set the ship down under cover of darkness. And he's become very, very good at doing this over the years. He can get you within a couple days of where these orcs have their base camp.
Student 9, how do Mammon's armies communicate between each other? Magic, or do they carrier pigeons? What?
He says it depends. They would use certain types of magic amongst his most trusted lieutenants and generals. The rank and file, just the orcs and goblins and whatnot, probably just use whatever means they still have. Many of the lowlings probably don't even know who Mammon is or how high up their command structure goes.
My vote's just run in there, get the statue, leave, kill any orcs in the way.
How many orcs are we talking about?
Thousands. This is the heart of Mammon's orc hordes. One of his high generals was gifted with this statue with the condition that all of his underlings poop and pee on it.
So,
how nimble is this airship? Eyes, can we get some ropes and bring it down low enough that we could just bring it across?
He says that's potentially in the cards, provided they use quite a lot of firepower to repel the orcs that are attacking them. Like, they would have to have people manning the ballistas. They would have to have people chucking bombs over the deck, explosives into the ground. They would probably consider bringing on a contingent of archers, maybe a couple dozen men.
So I think the four of us can handle the groundwork if we have a winch or something to get around the statue.
Can we Fulton it?
Could you just Fulton it, just jump down and... but that's the plan. We want to bring the ship close and wage all-out war on these orcs.
I don't think that's the best call.
I don't either.
I think...
What is the best call, then?
The statue's too heavy to sneak in or out.
Yeah. And if
it worked for a traveling caravan. It worked in an auction house in the dead of night. It's not going to work in the center of an orc army.
How flammable is the orc's location?
I mean, you probably picture there's lots of potentially harmful gases floating in and around this latrine pit.
No, not the latrine pit. I mean, like the whole... Like you said, it's in the middle of the thing here, but it's a wasteland, right? That all the trees and stuff are dead in the forest.
Captain Ice has the resources to put together incendiary devices. Bombs that you can fling from catapults. kind of things. Is that what you mean?
Well, I meant to just do a distraction and then go in with the ship.
Here's my idea. Red, you have your horn, your signal horn, yes?
Yeah.
What we do is Captain and I, you stay far enough away with the ship ready to go. Then once we've prepared this thing and gotten the space to get Windy Statue out, then we signal you come flying in as fast as you possibly can, and then we use the hook and the winch or whatever mechanism we have at our disposal to get.
You do want to Fulton her out.
Yes.
A little bit, yeah, maybe just a little bit of that.
So Raazu describes the Fulton retrieval system.
Yeah.
And we just all do we all hang on to the statue for dear life?
And once again, this is a spectacular caper that would make for an excellent adventure that could take up easily a session of daring combat and wonderful escape, but we simply do not have time for today. And you dredge Windy, who, other than the staff missing from the center of her curled wings, is otherwise completely intact, just covered in solidified layers of orc muck.
Raazu will do her best to scrub her off before the
Yeah, Red's doing that too.
before Calcine does her deal.
I'll get the low bits.
So yeah, Windy, after you come back and retch up a month's worth of whatever, you hear this story about how Birdie was tending to your low bits.
Thank you, Birdie.
You're welcome. You're my favorite.
I know.
60 some odd years, Windy.
That's pretty good.
Something about... They don't know the specifics, Windy, but something about your action of winding yourself around the staff prevented Mammon from claiming it for all that time. He had to bend considerable...
Really pissed him off.
He had to bend considerable resources for decades before he had the means to free the staff from your grip. Although apparently now that has already happened.
How long was Windy in possession of or how long were the orcs in possession of Windy's statue?
Not long, because Student 9 had gotten word from one of his spies down on the ground pretty much right around the time you guys came back with Birdie.
Okay.
So it has not been long.
See, and you said I shouldn't keep the staff. 64 years, Raazu, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Let's see you do better.
The amount of devastation that has been wrought to the land below is heartbreaking, to say the least. Everything you guys did in the far north was with the expectation of returning south to lands that you recognized and understood, and to now fly over the mountains and the foothills where the Moakden once lived, and over where Shallow Scale Lake was, and the great rivers that you traveled, and the great woods, and seeing all of it brought devastation. It's a sobering moment, to say the least. To most of the people, to most of the people aboard the ship, this is just the world they know.
Wait, there's one thing I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Student 9, was there ever a magical calamity? Was there ever a war of the various sources of magic?
He says that all the research he's been able to unearth speaks of the calamity that Brenier told you about, the one that was some 1,000-odd years ago. A lot of terrible stuff has happened at Mammon's hands, but to his knowledge, no great cataclysm has occurred. The most disastrous thing that's happened is the rivers have turned to gold, which has caused the land to begin dying.
That's Mammon turning this world into his own. He's shaping the cataclysm by doing things like that.
Well, we still have time.
Birdie will dig in his pack and pull out the book on contestants and wave it in front of Student 9. Like, would you like to read this?
He says he's intrigued to read anything new. That's why he's called.
Find new books.
That's why he's called that.
Birdie tosses him the book on contestants.
And he says he will study it.
Speaking of learning things that are new, first Adrex, and then Windy pats on the railing of the ship. I always knew you guys could learn how to fly if you put your minds to it.
I mean, we've been on this boat for about a month now, and it's starting to feel like home again.
I feel I'm kind of disappointed because I wanted to be the one to figure out how to build this, and a gnome beat me to it.
Uncle Sideburns wants absolutely nothing to do with you, by the way.
That's fine.
You've heard from other crewmen that he's had meetings with Captain Eyes imploring him to chuck you overboard, but Captain Eyes has so far refused.
I know I like
chuck
Captain
him
Eyes.
overboard.
Well, you can't because he's the only one who knows how the ship works.
I could figure it out. We should ask Captain
more
Eyes
pressing matters, like
making
sure Mammon takes a silver bullet to the head.
We should ask for our book
Silver
back,
bolt to the head.
by the way, on how to build a airship.
Adrex invents the bullet.
Uncle Sideburns has expanded it considerably over the years. Kind of reinventing the sciences of aeronautics.
So, I mean, all of the stuff that Breniar told us was more than likely Mammon telling us. All this stuff about the cataclysm and the world being remade. And so far,
he still controls Breniar, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. I would imagine that he has he had no interest in changing that arrangement between himself and Breniar. No.
Birdie, in private, not in front of anybody else, ask them if he should tell anybody about Kilbirth. It's like, should we mention that, or does like having another dragon running around in the situation make things worse?
Here's the problem I see with that. Actually, that might be an asset, because when we were in the Obsidian Spire, the black dragon that was there was not Kilbirth.
Right.
Kilbirth may be an asset if he's of a mind.
What you also, Rick said that the gentleman we met down in the Underdark was here, didn't he?
Yeah,
Bronzol,
yes.
yeah.
Bronzol,
Yes.
Yeah. Birdie shakes his head and says, if I go back, I'm not going back alone.
So that's what we'll do next. You guys have a ship that Captain Eyes describes as always being able to keep a step ahead of Breniar and his flying hordes. They have no shortage of them, but the ship is able to outrun them all. There are 3 dragons to contend with. Breniar himself, the transformed Ice King, and the kind of pathetic black dragon you met in the mines.
I thought that one couldn't fly.
Yeah.
Apparently it can now.
What was
Breniar? If you recall, Breniar took his wings from him in the first place.
Yeah. Right.
What was his name? That's an excellent question. I don't know if you guys ever knew it.
He told it to us. It's just I don't remember what it was.
Draggy.
Draggy the dragon.
Because remember, Windy insulted him, and he was like, "How dare you? I am a great black dragon. Blah blah blah. Bow before me."
Is that what he said? Blah blah blah.
I mean, that's
Who would have thought there'd be 2 dragons? That's just unlikely.
like we knew of 2 dragons like down south.
So do we try to? So the question is, do we try to enlist Kilbirth? Birdie, you know him best.
I mean,
is he of a mind?
He could be persuaded, but he's not a nice dragon. He's not. It's a double-edged sword kind of situation. Like, how much do we need the muscle is the question.
Then the only way I see for us to write this would be to cut off the serpent's head. No offense, Red.
No, I'm sorry again.
to cut off the serpent's head, cut off Mammon, destroy him, get hit. That's the only way I see this that's the only way I see that we can reverse this, because we stop Mammon. That brings Breniar back on to at least not our purposes, but not actively working with Mammon.
What have the other living gods been up to?
Which one specifically do you ask about?
I'll ask about my flavor of the month.
No news whatsoever. You do get the news that your monastery that you're from has apparently been wiped out. There was an enormous battle there where the Red Dragon fought against Breniar and his opposition in the skies. The entire mountains were kind of laid to devastation. As far as the Windukes, way up here, the Council of Aqua. Is it Akka or Aqua?
Akka.
Akka.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It's not like a whistling thing. There's the hard...
It's a whistling thing, but this is how I say it in your filthy, like,
tongue language.
Land tongue.
Just, I'm not sure how you get from a melodious whistle to a hard K sound.
Right.
Yeah. No news. Nobody knows. But you have a flying ship, and is that something you want to investigate?
I think that...
So.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't know any Devil Slayers.
Mm-hmm.
We do know a Dragon Slayer.
In the Feywild.
In the Feywild, yeah.
Can this thing fly to a star?
Very no. Can't get that high.
I can try to call them up and ask them for you.
It's also very difficult to fly in inclement weather. There's some kind of alchemical protections on the actual blimp part of the vessel that protect it from... it's strong enough to protect it from missiles fired from the ground, arrows and slings and such, that also offer it some protection against, think like hail.
Wait, how...
I have a thought.
The gas, is the gas combustible?
Of course it is.
Ooh, I certainly want to be up here.
Why it would be a very bad idea to engage one of these dragons from the ship.
Yeah.
We basically got, what? We got 3 potential living gods to talk to. We've got Kilbreth, we've got the Council of Akka, the Windukes, and then we got the... We never did get an answer whether she was the Summer Queen, but apparently they are in conflict with Mammon as well.
So... There is the possibility of a 4th. We could try and make contact with the Red Star and hope that we get the Quetzal and not the demon.
How would we
Is that
start
the only... Like, you just take a shot in the dark and hope you don't miss?
50-50?
I don't exactly understand it. I wasn't a member of the religious castes, and they would have decried the existence of the Quetzal as blasphemy anyway.
Raazu's looking down at her armor where the symbol of Ostrom has been lacquered onto it. Are we turning to the gods?
I had a thought.
Oh, alright.
So, when we were playing around with Chung Jiao, that's his name, right?
Close enough.
I had to be attuned to the statue, right? And I was not aware of anything else. And we're assuming that the gold statue, Breniar, works the same way. And if Mammon is controlling him, then what we need to do is we need to distract us, so while he's acting with Breniar, we attack him while he's using the statue. And in that state, he is completely and utterly hopeless. Until, I don't know, something breaks or something. We didn't science it, but...
But I think we've got enough information. I think we have enough information to go with that kind of a point. But that would mean that someone would have to engage Breniar while Mammon is controlling him. And Raazu looks very trepidatiously at Captain Eyes and says, I don't think he's willing to risk his ship or his crew for that.